Meaden is an old word for a meeting place, and mead is an old word for a meadow. Now, if you go back about 800 years to the early 1200s, the king at the time was a guy called John. He came to the throne in 1199 and he died in 1216. And we've only ever had one king of that name, and he turned out to be a bit of a tyrant. He would often introduce all kinds of measures, particularly taxation, without consulting his barons. And if he couldn't get his own way, he took all sorts of punitive action against him, including hostages. He often took daughters of the aristocracy as a hostage until he got his own way. Well, as you can imagine, they weren't very happy about that, and eventually a group of them got together and they drew up a list of complaints which they submitted to King John. It was an attempt to limit the powers of the king. And now this list of complaints became written up as one of the most famous documents in English history. It's called the Great Charter, or to give it its correct name, Magna Carta. And it had a huge influence, not only on our own history, but also on that of the United States, particularly when they were framing the Constitution at the end of the 18th century. So an enormously important document. There were 63 clauses in total, all limiting the power of King John. And he was forced to sign this very famous document at Runnymede in the summer of 1215. We don't know the exact spot, but it was somewhere in the meadow, which we're going to pass in a few moments. There are only 4 copies remaining now of the original. There were several hundred produced at the time. They were distributed around the country, so everybody knew what had happened.